Okay, you know, you're the next. Yeah. She had two sons. And he's one of his best actors. What is that? Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting tonight. Thank each of you for coming and playing a part in local government. It makes us feel good to see our citizens to come out and find out what's going on, participate in local government. This is local government. So tonight we welcome each of you to come and sit with us, and we try to get you in and get you out so they can go back home and watch the ball game. But again, thank you for coming tonight and being with local government Board of Commissioners. Welcome to the whole town tonight. We have a pledge and invocation tonight by Commissioner Tony.
If you would, please stand for the pledge. Please open the door. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Last Chairman Leachfield, pray with us.
Most Holy Father, we come this hour for thanksgiving and supplication to say thank you. We really come tonight counting our blessings as we stand before you. You've really been good to us. Even for your wealth and this rain, the earth say thank you. So do we. Father, we come together tonight as your children. Ask that you come in and guide us and lead us. Teach us to do what's right for all of your children. When we work together, it always works out for the best. And Father, as we stand before you this night, we all have sinned and come short of your glory. So each of us take this great opportunity to ask forgiveness for all of our sins and all of our trespasses as we invite you in tonight. We got one city, one county, one state, and one nation. Teach us that lesson tonight so we one day all will hear your voice. So well done and welcome home. All in your son Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Again tonight, we welcome each of you for coming. Thank you for Mr. Hunt for the pledge and this invocation part tonight. Thank you for coming again to Local Government. Welcome. Tonight we need a motion to adopt. A motion from the board to adopt. Are there any changes, any adds on, any take off? Not, I need a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, then second. Motion second to adopt. All had time to consider. All in favor with aye. Opposed? I have the same. Thanks so much. Mr. Attorney, at this time we have a public hearing for the budget year 2017-2018. Will you please present that public hearing at this time?
I will. There is a public hearing tonight for the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget pursuant to 159-12. So at this time, anyone wishing to be heard regarding the budget, if you will, come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and speak on the budget.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Members of the board,
Good evening.
staff, and fellow Hocalians. I'm Ellen McNeil, 107 Steeple Run Drive, Frankfort, North Carolina. I'm here to just say a word of thank you for the work you're doing on behalf of our citizens, but especially for our youth and for our senior citizens. I have seen children just like the rainbow, playing and having a good time at that splash pad. That is one of the best decisions that I think this commission has made in the 10 years I've been working closely with them. It's good to see all these little children out there having a good time, enjoying playing with each other. And I ask you to continue to look at our children and our senior citizens, because they're the ones who depend on us adults to do for them. And I also want to thank you for the sacrifices that you make from your families, that you are here. And I know how many hours you put in, what all you do. And many people here can't say they know from behind the scenes, but I know, been there and done that. And I want to thank you for that work. And I want to thank the departments too. Some of the departments have sacrificed for years just so certain things could really be taken care of. That pie won't slice but so thin. I think you do a good job of slicing it. And I want to thank you for the job you do. And as they say in the military, carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ed.
Here's your public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak on the budget? It's fairly short. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let me say before we close the public hearing on the budget, one of the things that we're really trying hard to address in this budget is the Meal on Wheel program. We still have seniors at home not able to have a meal, the per meal. Through this great program that we're doing, we're trying to address that waiting list that's in our county, that every citizen, senior, disabled, that we're able to provide a meal for them on wheels. We thank Ms. Holloway for the fine job she do over Senior Service Building and helping us to get our seniors meal. Ms. Holloway, thank you for that. This budget wants to address, to try to clean up that waiting list, so all of our children can certainly be able to go to bed at night with a hot meal in their home. So we're certainly working on that. The other piece of that we're working on is a park and recreation center that involve a senior center also within that center. About $8 million project that we had promised our citizens some years ago. We want to address that in this budget down at the 211 park. We have the park, one of the most beautiful park in the state of North Carolina. I say national. We want to, I can say that, I live in Canada. We want to look at putting money to go ahead and build that park and rec center, 2 or 3 gyms within the center, along with a senior citizen room or whatever they need in that facility. So we address our seniors and we address our young people in this budget. We see that we might be able to do that at this time. Also, we're looking at to help our farmers and building ag cultures building. We have people that in buildings that need to come out of buildings. So if we can build that building, that'll help our farmers of Hope County. A lot of money comes from the farmers of Hope County, a lot of dollars that is put into our county from our farmers. So we want to keep that going on. We have to eat, they have to farm, and we want them to keep on farming. When they stop farming, we stop eating. So Bible don't you stop farming. So we want to continue that piece of it. So we want to be able to address some of those issues, along with the schools have some great needs and issues. But for that is some of the issues that this budget will address. We're not finished with it yet. We still have to find dollars to make that happen. And certainly tonight, we want to thank all of our taxpayers for trusting us to spend your dollar wisely. And that's what we're doing. We're making your dollar go as far as we can without a tax increase. We worked very hard up to this point not to have a tax increase because we believe that our seniors and our citizens are not able to pay higher taxes. We are lower than Cumberland County and also Robinson County. I think Moore County is the only county that we are not able to lower our tax at Lewisville County because there are millions and billions of dollars in Moore County. We haven't got there yet. But we, other than that, surrounding county, we have one of the lowest tax rate. And we work very hard to get through even this budget to keep that tax rate as it is right now. We will continue to do that. Whatever we have to do, move and cut to keep a low tax rate in Hope County. Now, before we close the hearing, current, any other board member might have some issues like the rest of it.
I think, Chairman, you said it well, of the state of the county, it sounded like.
I get paid for that. Go ahead.
I'll just echo what you said, Chairman. We're just trying to do this budget without a tax increase and areas that we're trying to address that we've been transparent about and been telling our folks about. And, you know, we're trying to put all those projects together and make it happen. I think that our fund balance speaks for itself, and the good job that has been done that we're doing, and I think the good job that we're doing. So I'm pleased with where we're at right now. As you say, we're not finished with the budget, but I believe we're in a good place right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Anyone else? And certainly, would change that we're seeing some of the best fund balance than we've seen in a long time in Oak County. And that is a plus. At least we was able to clean that budget up, and take out things that was not supposed to be in the budget, even Ms. Evans on your day, some put into the budget, not on our behalf. That we was able to clean all that up, and we're seeing some of the greatest numbers now, fund balance as good as it has, and only God can tell you to win. But we have a great number in fund balance. It's really surprising us that the fund balance is where it is, and we are so grateful that we have a good fund. We do not have a problem at all with cash flow at this time with our fund balance. That's a good thing, Oak County. I think Cumberland County has a $27 million deficit at this time. I would hate that, telling the LGC, I don't see why you ever even call Oak County again with $27 million deficit in Cumberland County. God, anyone that wishes to speak at the public hearing, they got a hand. Please come and stop. How you doing today?
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of procedure now, just so when I want to go, if you want to say that, you took up the list and heard from the public. You didn't close the public hearing.
Still open.
But she went on the list. So what I'm saying, I don't mind her speaking.
That's not a list.
That's not a list. Okay, all right.
I didn't hear anybody's close.
Okay.
If you had, that would
We
be
have not.
nice.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
You're fine. Go ahead, Mr.
I just want to mention, I read in the paper, Cumberland County as the commissioners were planning their tax increases or no tax increases. They decided to have a sales tax increase because that would eliminate having to have a property tax. And the comment that really hurt me was the add-on that, remember, we get a lot of the taxes from out of our county. So what I would like to know, have you considered maybe some enticement for businesses, more retail businesses, as I once said, office supply stores, other stores to come in here so we don't have to go to Cumberland and support their taxes? They are delighted for us to spend our money there. And a lot of the people, especially in the eastern part, spend their money there. And the western part goes to Moore County and the southern part goes to Scotland County. So we need to entice some of those commonly used businesses more of them to come into us. And maybe we may have to lure them with a few dollars of some sort. Have you considered that? That's all.
Yes, ma'am. When we open up that wastewater plant out in the Rockfish area, that plant was standing between us and a whole lot of other businesses that would love to come this way. We were able to have a ground open, the ribbon cut of that plant this month. That opened the door and gates out of 401 to let anything out come in and keep anything in from going out.
Yeah.
So we are working very hard and for that, to have a committee that served down at the chamber on that board to go out and seek and bring business our way. And when they come, we have a package
Okay.
that we set down and offer to them, and tax incentives, tax breaks, or whatever that business is able to offer us, as long as Hope County most of the time be the winner. We don't have any dollars to go out and give away throughout the winter. We was able to set out and negotiate. So
Yeah.
that part of Hope County is on the move. And certainly that's plans at the table that we're working on. We wide open to make this county one of the greatest county and keep the greatest county.
I hate
In the state of
bribes,
North
but
Carolina.
that's about the only way you're getting.
That's the only way you're gonna,
businesses to come
it's the only way you're gonna get it. You have to go out and entice them, offer them packages.
We don't call it bribe, it's incentives.
But I'm old fashioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming.
And a point of clarification, Cumberland County is going to increase their property taxes in the next 30 minutes. So I want to make sure you're sure, it's not sales taxes, they're going to increase their property taxes by 4 cents. It's going up to 79.3 cents per $100 evaluation. It was 74. The county manager budget had it at 82. So they were able to trim it, but they are going to raise their property taxes, which is, above ours, thank goodness, which is going to give us the bit more wiggle room and also be able to tax some of those business be able to attract them to come here as well.
That's just not open the door.
Yeah, we like to see those property taxes going up over there.
Absolutely.
You know, that's a good thing for us.
Yeah. And I was hoping he wouldn't get up and ask us to increase the sales tax. We so beautiful and smart, Mr. Darling, we're not willing to increase any tax in Hope County this year. So I'm so glad you didn't say that. But yeah, the property tax will be going up, as he said earlier. That will help us locate and bring more business to Hope County. Tonight, you said in the greatest county in state of North Carolina.
I know.
Thank you. Ms. Gray, is anyone else wish to speak on this?
What, wish you to speak to the public here?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we come to.
Second.
Motion second, the public hearing for budget year 2017, 2018 come to a close. All had time to consider, all in favor with aye. Opposed, I have it. I have it. Board, we need to look at your calendar and come up with some work days. Go ahead and finish this up by June 30th. You know, you have any dates in mind? Got to look at your calendar. You have about 2 weeks.
And remember, we'll have to do the ordinance after you do it, so.
You're gonna look at the calendar. You can do it this week, next week,
We're doing afternoon.
afternoon.
Yes.
Okay, next week.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which day? Tuesday or Wednesday preferably.
On the Tuesday and Wednesday
Tuesday, Wednesday.
in the afternoon,
That's good for everybody?
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
26.
Yes,
about 1 o'clock, Mr. Wright?
27th and the 28th.
About 1 o'clock then?
About 7 o'clock.
Oh.
We don't have to get that early.
I only state that because whatever changes we bring back, we're going to have to do the ordinance and have that ready by June 30th, so.
That'll be that Friday.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
we have to have a
because-
Friday meeting.
Coach Scott Allen, you good?
Yeah, definitely Tuesday and Friday is definitely good.
Okay.
What do Wednesday look like?
I'll make Wednesday work sometime.
Okay, next Tuesday and Wednesday at
Okay.
1 p.m. The budget will, we said this meeting tonight for continuation of work days on the budget. Next Wednesday and Thursday at
Tuesday and
Tuesday and Wednesday. You got that, Wayne?
Wednesday.
Okay. And then we will go ahead from that and adopt the budget, maybe not those 2 days, to try to finish up all the details and get all our line items. Dobby, you wait, Dobby. We ready for all your cleanups for this year's budget. You have all your cleanups, all your end dates, all your departments at the end, ready to clean up everything by that? Yes. You have all that ready to go? Yes. Okay, so make one move. Okay, good. Sounds good. Consent A through K. Do any of the board members wish or have any problem with any of those issues? So please pull it.
Mr. Chairman, let's pull consent item 3I for clarification,
Okay. 3I.
just to clarify.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the remainder? Second.
Second.
Motion second. All right, time to consider. All in favor with aye? Opposed, I have it. Mr. Sutton, state your.
The, Mr. David Chestnut, he's not up for reappointment, it's only Don Porter
Okay,
is up for reappointment.
okay,
So just for clarification,
all right.
So we're gonna take just now.
take him off and then keep Mr. Porter on. And I make a motion that we approve the reappointment of Don Porter to the Lumbee River Workforce Development Board.
You heard the motion, Mr.
Second.
David Chestnut is not up to be reappointed at this time, and Mr. Don Porter is up. Has motion and second. All had time to consider, all in favor with aye? Opposed, I have it. Thank you so much. Tax collector report, Ms. Jackie Dudley, she's in the building.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
evening.
There was a total collected for the month of May current year is $94,169.68 at a 95.9% rate compared to a 94.60% rate last year. Prior year's collected was $71,731.24 at a 36.25% rate compared to a 56.44% rate last year. Total collected for the month of May was $165,900.92.
That, give me those numbers again, 95.5 for this current year and 94.6 for last year. Okay, so you got about more better this year than last year. Next 15, 20 days, Daphne, from your experience, what are you looking for to come in?
Probably about another 0.5%.
So you probably get maybe 96,
95.5.
maybe end of the year 96%.
No, probably about 95.5.
It's 95.
Oh, 09.
Oh, gotcha.
So you said,
It's 09 now.
I think you said 95.5.
No, 95.09.
I missed that O. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Tax assessor, Ms. Jenny Gibson, how you doing tonight?
Okay.
Good.
Can't remember before. The first item I have tonight, is a release for James McGill. This is a request. There was no septic tank. This has been verified by the Environmental Health Department. There is not a septic tank on the property. It has not been. So a release of $50.54.
Okay, there has a motion for release.
So I will motion to
Second,
second.
all right, have consider all in favor with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I have it, thank you.
My second item is the Sandy Ridge Apartment appeal. This is a 2016 decision. They appealed to the Property Tax Commission. Has now been settled and ordered by the Property Tax Commission to adjust the value to $1,090,870. Results in a refund of $4,892.55 plus interest of $244.63 for a total refund of $5,137.18.
Okay, tax commissioner has spoke, so we must,
What's the recommendation?
Make a motion.
a second. Motion second, I have time to consider all in favor with aye. Opposed, I have it. And this tax commissioner has spoken, thank you. You have a contract tonight to approve with Town of Aberdeen, Freddie Johnson, 5 Marshall's here.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't have my, I just want to take a brief moment and summarize a quick update, something may take on April 3rd. I think you recall the Moore County Board of Commissioners terminated the fire protection contract with Crestline Fire Protection District, which has a district in our area. As a result of that, we sort of in the dilemma, we need to find some fire protection. Because of action taken by the Crestline Board of Directors, they decided to turn the assets over to the Aberdeen Dam Fire Department, and they accepted that. They want to fully staff that department and respond from there 24/7. I can tell you it's a win-win for us. It's enhanced fire protection. The contract that you have in front of you is a performance-based contract, and it's going to serve us well. It's been approved from our county and the town attorney, and I'm asking you to approve it so they can start working for us July 1st.
Okay, Fred, this is good. Of course, Crestline being on the county line, which means that's Moore County and Hope County anyway. They fire rated at this time. There
It's a good question. Crestline was a 5 as well.
was a 5,
Yes, sir. The town of Aberdeen is a 4.
is a 4.
Okay, once this becomes effective, when we notify the rating bureau, that area drops to a 4.
Okay,
And there's another caveat, in about 9 months to 12 months, the town of Aberdeen is being re-rated.
okay,
I expect him to drop down further, which will benefit us also.
okay.
So our commercial property will have significant insurance savings.
And our citizen will get a better insurance rate on their home.
They, as mentioned, 5 citizens, homeowners, 6 is the best it's gonna get.
6 is basically get a homeowner insurance policy.
Anything below 6 affects commercial property owners.
Okay, okay, so you get better, commercial probably get more of a benefit than the residential.
I think, matter of fact, going from a 5 down to a 3, or even a 2, you're talking tremendous savings.
On commercial side. Okay,
And we have quite a bit of commercial items, so,
right, yeah. Along with this benefit, main thing is benefit Hope County citizens to get them the best possible.
and the good thing is, Chairman Leach, once this goes into effect, there's gonna be, the department's gonna be staffed, so
Okay.
there's gonna be a response immediately.
So much quicker. That sounds good to me. And they benefit Hope County, benefit me. Thank you, Fred.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve instead of Fire Marshal Johnson's recommendation for approval and adoption of the fire protection contract.
Second. Motion second. All have time to sit off it with aye. Opposed? Aye. Thanks, Fred. Keep working. Ms. Manager, down to number 7, your report.
My report is, just to give the board an update on the Best Street utility infrastructure project that we've been working on. The bids are out.
They are due in on June 30th, and they'll be opened in this room at 2 p.m. So we should be getting started on that as soon as we get the bids in. Over the next week, Garvin and I will work closely with the departments to make sure that everyone is in line where they're supposed to be. The ones that aren't, we've already notified those departments, and we're working on everything so that when we bring it back to the board, everything's straight as far as our budget goes for closing out this current year and going into the next year. And that's what we have so far. So we're working on budget.
Sounds
Whatever
good.
improvements you guys make on it.
Sounds good. We want one of the best ever. Let's do it. Thank you. We're waiting on Chair and Beck report. It's on the Waymont Center. You want 30 minutes late? 30 minutes about up. Maybe they'll drop in a minute.
Yeah, they said they're gonna come about 7:30. Chair.
It's about 7:30 my watch. So hopefully they walk in any time. Other than that, we're gonna have to take a recess because we can't talk about anything else that's not open tonight. So that's what we can discuss. I could bring up something, but I can't discuss it.
No, he's gonna be in about most of the time.
So let's take a 5-minute recess.
He was all out.
we go back on tape tonight and back into our minutes. Again, we went into a 10-minute recess in order to give time for Terry Becker to come in. They are here now. This is our last item of business tonight. There's a closed session that the board will hold tonight. This time we're gonna go back and ask that the Terry Becker come forward and give us the details.
Yes, sir, Commissioner, if you give me a moment to put up a slide presentation, I'll be happy to do that. Mr. Chairman, while Mr. McKay is bringing his PowerPoint to life, I want to remind the board that the presentation that was given to the public, I believe, last time we were here was what we deemed as an update to the board at the time, because all of the analytics had not been completed at that point. And so we presented the board with the information. This new report has some additional detail. There's not been any material change from what you've seen earlier. There's just some additional detail that we've discussed with you. We anticipate there are some other matters that we'd like to discuss with you in a closed session. I understand the county terms you have that.
But this is the final report.
This is the final report. All right, Commissioners, I'm Scott McCann, a partner with Terry Becker. I'm the partner responsible for the work performed today. This is a brief update to our last update, but all the information contained in this update, with few exceptions, is contained in the detailed report in both sessions. Disclaimer, I've been authorized to present this update pursuant to authorization from the Charleston Group and you as the commissioners. I just want to go over our scope, remind everybody of our scope limitations, the examination procedures that we perform, our findings, and then I'd like to talk through our summary impressions and our recommendations. Our scope is we agreed to perform some limited procedures and limited internal review procedures over a limited scope to assist the county with its internal review. In other words, to assist you. The scope of our procedures is specific to all the county and sheriff's office employees with overtime hours. Once we completed our initial discovery procedures, we mutually agreed to focus on employees that had 300 hours or more in overtime in a given fiscal year. From that population of employees, we agreed that we would perform examination procedures for any employee within that population that had more than 400 hours of overtime, or 400 hours or more of overtime, I should say, in a given year. Some of the limitations we had is we weren't able to conduct sufficient information gathering exercises or interview certain people, to which I'll point out here. Sheriff Hubert Peterkin, Captain Tim Rugg of the Sheriff's Office, Assistant Special Agent Adrian Williams from the State Bureau of Investigation, and Gina Schaff, who's a former county human resources employee. We were unable to obtain Sheriff's Office copies of the original timesheets to determine if disparities exist by comparing them with the timesheets maintained by the county, and I'll explain later in the report why we think that's an important procedure. Other limitations is we were unable to determine the number of sheriff's signature stamps maintained by the sheriff's office. We just don't know how many. We were unable to walk through and understand internal controls over the sheriff's employee timekeeping sheets or timesheets, including the following. Controls over safeguarding the signature stamp. Signature stamp that represents the sheriff's authorization. We're not sure how that's safeguarded. Controls over, or I should say, sheriff's employees with access and authority to use the signature stamp of the sheriff to approve employee timesheets. We weren't able to walk through that process. We weren't able to determine with any certainty which sheriff's office supervisors were designated to review and approve employee timesheets and use the sheriff's signature stamp. We just don't know who the individuals are that are authorized to do that. We obtained a recent list of sheriff's office supervisors on March 16th, and we supplied by the county, which we have included in the report, and we think those are the likely people that would be responsible for reviewing and approving time cards that's within the report. A couple other limitations. The sheriff initially declined to cooperate with the county's internal review and a request for information and support thereof. To wit, the sheriff responded with a suggestion to use a protective order through his attorney, Ronnie Mitchell, and the district attorney, Christy Newton, as a condition to release copies of the timesheets. The sheriff declined to enter into a protective order releasing the requested timesheets. In response, the Board of Commissioners requested the sheriff present a special report to the board on these matters pursuant to the statute on the screen in order for it to complete its internal review. The sheriff declined to cooperate with the sheriff's internal review for these matters, of which there's a letter, a copy of the letter that's included in the appendices in your report in the sheriff's response. It's an important note that was represented or advised by your attorneys to us that in presentations to the Honorable James Floyd Ammons Jr., Superior Court Judge, by the district attorney and the sheriff's attorney, Ronnie Mitchell, that the sheriff's office acknowledged that the investigative work being performed by Cherry Becker would likely be completed substantially sooner than the SBI investigation, and therefore suggested that the county consider allowing Cherry Becker to work with the district attorney and the SBI at the county's expense. Our examination procedures, and I want to go through these in detail so that our impressions will make sense. We looked at approximately, or examined, I should say, approximately 1,800 timesheets for 35 sheriff's office and detention center employees with overtime in excess of 400 hours. So anybody with more than 400 hours, we selected as a sample to look at the timesheets supporting that employee's overtime. Our basic procedures are comprised of the following. This step A is to verify the original timesheet, which is our understanding is in fact in possession by the county. So understanding the original timesheet should be maintained by the county. B, determine if the timesheet contained in the county's records appears to be a copy, in other words, not the original. Determine if the timesheet contained in the county's records appears to be altered. They've been altered in some way. Determine if any of the timesheets are missing. Verify the employee timesheets appear appropriately authorized. And if you remember in the last public update, we had an example of a timesheet, and we went through the different levels of authorization that were depicted on that time sheet, including the employee signature, the employee supervisor's signature, and the sheriff's signature stamp, and the initials of the individual that would have applied the sheriff's signature stamp authorizing that time card. We noticed during our procedures that we needed to insert another procedure, and that is represented on the slide, procedure EE. It says verify the initials are recorded adjacent to the sheriff's signature stamp, indicating which supervisor applied the sheriff's signature stamp. And the purpose of that test is to identify where we only found the signature stamp of the sheriff only with no corresponding initials. And I'll explain later, but for the edification of the commissioners, we would think it's unusual for the sheriff to be actually stamping or signing signature cards, but that would rather be delegated to a supervisor to those structured overseeing those deputies and judges. Verify overtime on the timesheet contains formal documented justification for the overtime. If you remember from our last public update, the timesheet contains a block that is used to justify why the overtime is on the timesheet, and we would expect to see that block completed. Verified total overtime on the timesheet agrees to the county's system of record. We would not expect to see a difference between all the overtime collected on the timesheets and a difference in what's recorded in the county system of record, which is the Munis system, where they use it to process payroll. And then verify the total compensation recorded in the county's financial system for the selected employee agrees to the employee IRS form W-2. We wouldn't expect to see any differences there, but we wanted to test it all the way through to see, in fact, if the time recorded was reflected in compensation on the employee's W-2. And then last step, if available, compare the original timesheet to a copy retained by the sheriff's office, determine if there's any differences. So our population, just to refresh everybody's memory, because I'm going to be talking about employees with a mask on them, we're going to call them Deputy A, B, C. We looked at all the overtime hours for anybody that had overtime in excess of 300 hours. And of that population, if there were any deputies with overtime of 400 hours or greater, we'd highlight them and examine their underlying timesheets. And the table here will reflect that of the population that have over 300 hours, there were 24 deputies. And in the years where overtime exceeded 400 hours, you can see on there in the highlighted yellow background with the red, in 2012, there were 2 deputies, Deputy Q and Deputy J. And in 2014, 15, and 16, there were 4 deputies, A, B, and C. And overtime hours appears to have ranged somewhere between a little over 400 to up to 989 hours of overtime. And again, this is in a given fiscal year. The county reports on a fiscal year, so we pulled overtime records according to the fiscal year. We applied the same procedures to the detention center. Anybody that had overtime in excess of 300 hours, we denoted it. And anybody that had overtime in excess of 400 hours, we highlighted as indicated here and selected those timesheets for examination procedures. There were 29 jailers in this population that had overtime in excess of 400 hours in a given fiscal year. Just to be complete, we looked at all the other departments. The communications department had 2 employees that had overtime in excess of 300 hours, one in 2012 and another in 2013. So our population, our total population of employees that we examined was 35 employees timesheets. Our findings, or the results of our examination procedures, are step A, if you'll remember, is to determine if the original is in the possession of the county. In other words, we highlighted it shortly, missing original. We noted 18 exceptions with timesheets limited to Deputy B, if you'll remember the prior slide, and Deputy C that did not appear to be original timesheets. In other words, they appeared irregular because we would expect to see the original. Also note that Deputy B was terminated from employment for altered timesheets. This is the same deputy. Procedural step B was, does it appear to be a copy? We noted 18 exceptions with timesheets limited to Deputy B and C that appear to be copies. So there's 2 deputies that have similar characteristics in these exceptions, Deputy B and Deputy C. Appears altered. We noted 6 exceptions with the timesheets limited to Deputy B that appeared to be altered, which we believe is irregular. Missing timesheets. We did not detect any missing timesheets in the records contained by the not properly authorized. We noted 28 exceptions with timesheets that did not appear to be properly authorized, which appears improperly. We expect it to be properly authorized, as we highlighted the example of the timesheet in our last public update. As a subset of that, I think it's important. We noted that where they only had the sheriff's stamp only, it was limited. The authorization was just the sheriff's stamp, no corresponding initials next to it. Of the population we examined, and there was 1,800 timesheets, there was 242 of them that only contained the sheriff's signature stamp with no corresponding initials indicating who would have applied the stamp. That's important because, like we said, we think it would be unlikely that the sheriff is literally stamping all those time cards with his department, but would rather delegate that to his supervisors to do that. And that the person responsible for applying the sheriff's signature stamp would initial next to the signature stamp, indicating which employee applied the stamp to approve the time card as a delegate of the sheriff. This appears improper in that we would not expect, like I said, the sheriff to approve them. In addition, we noted in these instances where it was just the sheriff's signature stamp, that the pay periods all closely correspond. In some cases, they're virtually identical in 2016, where all the pay periods are the same pay period, and all we see is the sheriff's signature stamp on this group of employees, which may be indicative of collusion between the employees when considered with similar exceptions noted in Procedure E, not properly authorized, and Procedure F, which I'll describe on the next page. So when we only see the sheriff's signature stamp, it would cause us to further investigate, because if it's not properly authorized and all I have is the stamp, and potentially in the next step, we're going to see there's no justification or limited justification for the overtime, we would consider that irregular. So in this case, procedural step F will shorten it to no justification, but that would be the case where there is actually nothing in the box, no justification, or the dates in the box for overtime do not correspond with the dates on the time card representing what the overtime is for, or the, yeah, that's the two basic ones. And we would consider that to be irregular. The system record doesn't agree. We noted 2 instances of 2 employees where the system's record does not agree. In other words, the time card's overtime amounts do not agree with the amounts of overtime recorded in the county's system. The first one was with Deputy B. The system record showed 413 hours more in the system in fiscal year 2014 than what was recorded on the timesheets. Deputy J, however, the system record showed 83 hours less in fiscal 2012. So here's an indication where, looking at the overtime recorded on the timesheets and recorded back in the county system, it was understated, or there was more hours recorded on the timesheets than were in the time system, 83 hours. We think this should be reviewed by the county, so it would indicate that the employee may have been underpaid for those hours. This is Deputy J, and this occurred in fiscal 2012, where the overtime for this particular deputy was 448 hours for that year. So it's a possibility that somebody did get in all the overtime that this employee might have been entitled to. I do want to state, though, of all the time cards that we did look at, and I'll say this again later in the report, Deputy J's timesheets were the only ones that appeared to be proper all the way through. There were no exceptions with those timesheets. So out of the 35 employees we looked at, Deputy J's appeared to be proper in all respects, other than his time may have been understated in fiscal 2012 by 83 hours. That could have been caught through a mention. I don't know. I don't want to hypothesize, but I would say you probably want to look at that particular timesheet, even though it's in the past. We checked the W-2s against employee total compensation, and we reconciled all the W-2s with the county for all 35 employees without exception. In other words, whatever was recorded in the system for their overtime hours and their compensation reconciled to their W-2s. So we're no differences. The county timesheet doesn't agree to the sheriff's copy. Again, we're unable to compare the sheriff's employees' original timesheet to copies maintained by the sheriff because they were not produced. They were not produced for us to look at. Some unusual overtime exceptions noted during our procedure. So that was the results of our basic procedure, but we think there's some highlights that we want to make commissioners clearly aware of. One, in procedural step E, which was not properly authorized, we noted several instances where the employee, the supervisor, or the sheriff's stamp authorization predated the timesheet. In other words, I approved time before it was actually worked. In some cases, as much as 4 days in advance, which we would consider improper. In procedure F, which is the justification area, we noted the following. Overall, it appeared that in 2016, fiscal 2016, the vast majority of timesheets lacked any justification. There just wasn't a justification for the timesheets or anything noted on the timesheet. We noted certain timesheets where the date of the justification did not match the dates on the timesheet, which again we would say is improper if you're just copying and pasting some dates in the justification block that doesn't correspond to your time. We're not sure how that was appropriately reviewed and approved by supervisors. We noted that on certain timesheets that the same justifications and overtime dates were carried over to multiple timesheets, and in some cases they were carried over to different years. In other words, I carried a justification over from a previous year into a current year timesheet as justification, and that was used to prove the overtime. We noted in many cases where the justification for overtime simply stated worked overtime, no amplifying information. And we think that's improper. There should be a reason for working it. We noted 3 different employees in the detention center that appeared to have copied the same justification on their respective timesheets, where the dates of overtime didn't agree to the timesheet dates that were worked. It's the same, it appeared to be the same copy justification on those certain employees. And we noted that Jailer LL, and I know you don't remember this from the tables, so I'll highlight this. Jailer LL in the detention center appeared to have worked overtime for 24 of 27 consecutive days. But I know you can't think back here, but Jailer LL had overtime in every fiscal year in excess of 400 hours from 2012 to 2016. Every year this jailer had overtime. Numerous exceptions with it. In fact, the total overtime for this particular jailer for those years' work, the fiscal year's work, was approximately 3,200 hours, which we consider irregular. Our overall impressions, based on our procedures, with the exception of Deputy J, the remaining 5 deputies and 29 jailers with overtime in excess of 400 hours in a given year had numerous exceptions in their timesheet reporting we consider highly irregular and indicative of improper or falsified wages. We noted certain patterns in the natures and types of exceptions that indicate possible collusion among the employees to likely garner unauthorized or unjustified overtime compensation. However, due to the previously discussed scope limitations, we couldn't determine the identity of the sheriff's office supervisors with any certainty or interview the supervisor responsible for approving the timesheets. In addition, as stated earlier, we couldn't get copies of the original timesheets to examine them against the copies retained by the county to see if discrepancy exists. That might provide more clear evidence of improper time reporting and potential co-conspirators, given the known collusion discussed on the following page, which I'll get into. So said differently, if the timesheet maintained by the sheriff's office doesn't agree with the timesheet maintained by the county, it's clearly improper, but it would provide better evidence to find out whose employee it is, what supervisor associated with it, and whether or not there was potential collusion to put a copy of potentially a bad timesheet back in the sheriff's office. One that's not really the one that reflects what happened in the county's system records. It's important to note that Deputy B is Dieter Graham. He was terminated on or about February 21st and was identified in our observations in our first public update, but he was also identified in the population of employees subject to our examination procedures. So this is a known person. And this deputy's exceptions correspond to some of the other exceptions with the other employees, which I want to highlight. In addition, the former human resources manager acknowledged in our interview that she was aware that former Deputy Graham's timesheets had been altered and that she worked with the former deputy to record the improper overtime, resulting in unauthorized compensation to the former deputy. She acknowledged that in our interview. The former Deputy Graham's timesheets had numerous exceptions noted in our procedures, including the following. And just to remind the commissioners of what those were: missing the original, appears to be a copy, appears altered. Note that exceptions A1, missing original, and B2, appears to be a copy, were also noted in the timesheets of Deputy C, who we've not identified. So Deputy B has known exceptions, as indicated above, and Deputy C has the same types of exceptions. It would warrant that Deputy C's timesheets may in fact not be proper as Deputy B's were, Dieter Graham. In addition, the corresponding exceptions were noted in timesheets of the former Deputy Graham, the following: not properly authorized. We noted that multiple times. Sheriff stamp only on Deputy B, Deputy Graham's timesheets, and no justification for the overtime work. Of those exceptions noted, these exceptions were also pervasive with 4 of the other deputies. That is, Deputy A, C, D, and Q, and all 29 jailers had similar exceptions that were contained in Deputy B's, Dieter Graham's timesheets. The only employee that we examined, I'll remind the commissioners, was referred to as Deputy J, who had no exceptions in their time card reporting, other than they may have been underreported in fiscal 12. So the amount of overtime compensation corresponding to the timesheets subject to our procedures is approximately $713,000. So in other words, timesheets for very high overtime, anything at 400 hours and above, the total compensation from fiscal 12 to fiscal 16 was $713,000 associated with those timesheets. That represents about 64% of the overtime compensation for all the county and sheriff's operations employees with overtime of 300 hours or more. So in other words, if they had 300 hours or more, the 400 hours was included in that, and that represents 64% of $1.1 million from fiscal 12 to fiscal 16. The vast majority of the exceptions, the vast majority, and the irregularities noted in our procedures, our examination procedures, occurred in fiscal 12, in fiscal 16, fiscal 12 through fiscal 16 time periods. So the last 3 fiscal years, excluding this fiscal year, which is not yet completed. For the county records, the total amount of overtime paid by fiscal year to the sheriff's office and detention center significantly increased from fiscal 2013 to fiscal 14. In fact, it effectively doubled, if you'll note in the table here, and I'll highlight the area. So from fiscal 2012, the overtime compensation paid according to the county records was $293,000. In fiscal 2013, the overtime amount was $293,000, approximately $293,000. But please note in fiscal 2014 that the overtime more than doubles. It's $620,000 in fiscal 14 and continues on that trend through fiscal 16. That's significant because of the dramatic increase in overtime. And I want to correlate that as best we can with positions in that population. So based on information provided by the county, we compiled a table to estimate the approximate number of employees in the sheriff's operations without regard to employee turnover. It's hard for me to try to determine what the turnover was in a given year. And it's hard to determine who's a full-time versus a part-time employee or when their start date was. But it appears, and you'll see it in the table, from fiscal 12 to fiscal 14, the increase in positions was approximately 12 in the sheriff's office in the detention center. And I'll highlight that in fiscal 2012, for the county's records, there's approximately 115 employees. In fiscal 2014, there's 127, which is a difference of 12. It appears to be an increase of 12. Now, I will say, this is not in the report, but we did look at the W-2s issued also. In W-2s reporting for fiscal 12, there was 137 W-2s issued. And just for perspective, that's probably the nature of just turnover of people coming in and going, so you're going to issue W-2s for people that aren't there or who are retired. But we think this is the best proxy for what the population looks like. So before I move on, if you'll remember from the prior slide, overtime compensation effectively more than doubled from fiscal 12, fiscal 13 to fiscal 14. And employee headcount appears to go up by approximately 12 people. Normally, when you see employee headcount go up, you would expect overtime to go down. You wouldn't expect it to double. Again, it's unusual. Why? There should be a reason for that. So when comparing the significant increase in overtime compensation from 12 to 14, fiscal 12 to 14 in the sheriff's office and detention center, both of which effectively double, it's highly unusual. It doesn't make sense that it would double when your headcount is increasing. However, when the changes in overtime compensation and apparent increase in headcount is viewed against the results of our procedures, our examination procedures, they would further indicate that timekeeping activities supporting the sheriff's operations are highly irregular, indicative of improper or falsified wages beyond those of former Deputy Graham, because some of those same attributes exist in the rest of the population of the employees that we examine. We recommend that the timesheets relate to the 34 sheriff's employees, the 29 jailers, and 5 of the 6 deputies noted in this report that's in front of you should be thoroughly scrutinized by the SBI to determine if all the very high excess overtime was substantially justified and appropriately authorized. Moreover, due to the pervasiveness of the exceptions, some of which indicate possible collusion by the employees, we recommend that the respective employees, the supervisors delegated to review and approve timesheets, and the sheriff be interviewed by the SBI to determine if the compensation paid for overtime was proper. These results should then be turned over to the DA, the district attorney, for consideration of criminal prosecution where overtime amounts were improper or falsely obtained. All this is in detail in your reports, along with the scatter charts that we used earlier to identify the outliers in the population and select this sample of employees for examination. And that is the end of the update and the conclusion of our procedures and the results of that report today.
Any questions from the board? Any comment? Anything you did in the closed session?
I'm pleased that we finally received the final report. I think I shared some frustrations about the time in which it took for us to receive this. I look forward to reviewing the full report in the closed session. I have one question. From everything that you've done, I will say, unfortunately, when you have one person to do something, it can create a cloud over everyone and cause everyone to be placed under increased scrutiny. But can you clarify that this isn't a witch hunt just for the sheriff's office? How did you narrow it down to this? And what did you do for the county as a whole regarding this investigation?
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. I'll take a stab at it now that Scott McKay finish up. You may recall that on February 20th of this year, the SBI obtained a search warrant relating to the SBI's investigation of potential payroll irregularities and served the search warrant and other legal papers upon the county. That the search warrant gave the FBI effective control of your administrative offices. I think that night you guys had to meet somewhere else about the call. And so in that search warrant, there were 18 records that were sealed and computer and some other things. But in looking at the search warrant, we were able to identify what the problems were, at least where to start. But what we did do, and I have Scott elaborate on that, we took a deep dive on the county's employees looking for overtime irregularities. And we did the exact same thing for the sheriff's department. So there were two groups that we looked at: the county's employees and the sheriff's office, and employees included the detention center. That was the universe for which we looked. As Mr. McKay pointed out, we identified a number that we thought would be excessive. We used 300 hours as the benchmark to start the look. And through the course of that investigation, the overtime hours for folks employed by the county did not appear excessive in any way. And I'll let Scott, if you want to.
Sure. So if you remember from the first public update, we used some visualization tools, some scatter plots, to kind of categorize the employees by how much overtime they got. And we noted there was a large population, which is true across all county employees, where most overtime, if there is any, is 200 hours or less, or 10% or less of the employee's compensation, which we consider just nominal everyday overtime. The next tranche of employees, if you'll remember from the plots that I put up, and I didn't want to put them up again tonight, there was a group where it was more than 200 hours, but less than 400 hours, a much smaller population. But in there, we decided to just cut it in the middle, look at everybody that has over 300 hours, as we depicted on the tables analytically, just to see, is that a one-off, or is that continuous, they always have that, or to just analyze it to see if it appears irregular. And we noted in our update, and we noted in this report, that even though an employee has more than 200 hours, less than 400 hours, in that population, which is a much smaller population of employees, it could be appropriate. It could be appropriately authorized, justified, and relevant given the workloads of the deputies and the jailers within the confines of their responsibilities. They don't work 9-to-5 jobs. We recognize that. But if you'll also remember, we drew a line in the sand above 400 hours, and that population of employees was very small. In fact, if you remember from the tables, some of those employees had overtime of 900 hours, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000 hours, 1,100 hours, plus 1,200 hours.
And those are the ones that identified in this.
Those are the employees that are identified on those tables in the report for which we performed those examination procedures. Yes, Commissioner. Okay. We did not reveal their names other than the known names of the employee where we know we had improper wages, because we wanted to show that if you know you have predication, in other words, we know we have predication, it exists. All the evidence tells us that a reasonable person can conclude that a misappropriation of some nature has occurred. So therefore, if that particular person's timesheets and the exceptions noted in them start to resemble similar exceptions in other timesheets, a prudent person would call those out as irregular and get behind those numbers and investigate every exception there to see if it's proper, or whether or not there could be additional falsified wages occurring within that employee population base. Of those 35 employees we picked, remember, one of them appeared completely proper. We didn't see anything wrong with that or why it would justify any further scrutiny other than we should probably check the time on that individual, because most employees will let you know if they've been underpaid. And they're aware of it. So that's how we determine the population.
Another question, so the search warrant was sealed for 30 days, is that correct?
Well,
Tell a little bit about that.
yeah, the search warrant was sealed, and our evaluation of the search warrant remains sealed, so it's not been made public yet. And I think that, to your point, one of the things that we wanted to point out, I think it's important to put this whole thing into context. When this investigation first began, you know, there was a lot of discussion about the scope and breadth of it. And because of the various statements being made that this was a very large problem within the county, that is a serious investigation, so forth and so on, and you guys saw the various media outlets where this was reported, the Board of Commissioners felt that it was incumbent to take a look at itself, because all of a sudden the entire county government appeared to be subject to some sort of investigation, the scope of which we didn't understand. The county then authorized its county manager, one, to initiate an internal review, which is usual and customary. Whenever a local government agency, a public agency, even private corporations, you hear it all the time, whenever something happens that appears to be irregular, the first thing that the organizations do is initiate an internal review to see exactly what happened. So what the county did was textbook in nature. You brought in folks that were experienced in doing internal investigations. The very first thing that we did, though, was sought to work in a cooperative spirit with the district attorney's office and law enforcement. And although during the course of this, I believe that our work with the district attorney, I thought was collegial. Initially, the county's representatives got pushback in terms of trying to obtain timesheets that was necessary to verify the information. And so that, to some extent, impeded our ability to get to the answers quickly. So one of the questions that you made, one of the statements you made, was the amount of time that it took to get to the answer. Let me tell you why we took time. Because when you make statements that an employee has engaged in something improper, that's serious. When you make a statement that anybody has engaged in potentially unlawful activity, that's serious. So we took the requisite amount of time to check, double check, cross check the information that we had. And we did that based solely on the information that we were able to glean from the county's records. Because the way Hope County works heretofore is that the sheriff's office maintains manual timesheets. The originals are transferred at payroll cycles to the county. Now, the question is, where were those payroll timesheets altered? If they were altered at all, we believe the best way to make that determination was to have the opportunity to review the timesheet that were maintained by the sheriff's office. That simply didn't happen. And so we could have probably concluded this investigation a lot sooner had we had the level of cooperation. But I will say this. One of the things that the commission pledged to do early on was, once the report was complete, was to share that information with the district attorney and law enforcement. The county hadn't changed its position on that. But I say that to say that, you know, we received a communication last week from the district attorney that suggested that somehow the county and county's representatives, the lawyer, Chair Beckett, and the like, was causing a delay in the work of the SBI. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, there were many reports early on that Chair Beckett and Charleston Group need to get out of the way so that the SBI could do its work. In fact, the work that was being done for the county, the internal review that was being done on behalf of the county, was not dependent on the SBI's work, and the SBI's work is not dependent on the county's work. We did not ever, at any point in time, conclude when the Chair Beckett work would be completed. We simply said that when it was completed, that we would share it because the county pledged early on to be transparent and cooperative.
Attorney Charleston, what type of cooperation did you receive from Agent Williams from the SBI?
Well, I didn't personally reach out to him, but I do know that there was some difficulty in that. I think the real problem was simply the ability of Mike East and Rusty Pound to gather information regarding the timesheet so that we could run the appropriate analytics on it. That was the key piece, and that information simply wasn't forthcoming. And so when that information—
So what's the answer to my question? Did y'all get some cooperation? Did you get substantial cooperation? Did you get no cooperation? Well, that's my question. Mr. McKay, you want to answer that?
Commissioner, I can say that initially, both the investigators that work for Cherry Becker, Mike East, who's the former head of the SBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and Rusty Pounds, who both met as a former top-notch financial crimes investigator, did not get any cooperation from Agent Williams. We did speak with Agent Williams when we met with the district attorney and with Agent Williams, who also brought a financial crimes manager down from Charlotte to the meeting. We did meet with them there and did have some questions. We did share our update, and they had some questions on some of the information that they had. But apart from that, we did not initially have any cooperation from the SBI. And I'll couch that in that typically when we do these internal reviews, and we work with if it involves a local government, we work with the SBI Financial Crimes Unit fairly routinely. We have a history of doing that with them. We've done cross-training with them. It's a very amiable relationship. I'll try to get to the same answer. So that's the typical protocol.
I have another question I was trying to get to earlier, dealing with the search warrant. You said sealed, but can you confirm that it says something about overtime as being a main factor of the search warrant?
Well, because it's sealed, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of it in this in an open session, but I will say that it involved payroll irregularities for sure. I mean, that's what was being looked at. And you might recall that immediately after the search warrant was issued and the search was executed on the county, you had two folks that separated from either the county's employment or the sheriff's office employment. You had Sheriff Deputy D. Brown, he was referred to in various media, and you had the human resources person, LaTanya Benjamin. And then, of course, the Cherry Becker folks interviewed LaTanya Benjamin in my office. She acknowledged during that interview that she worked with D. Brown to offer his time frames. And so we knew that it involved the overtime.
Okay, so with that being answered about overtime, I'm sure you're aware that most county employees don't receive overtime pay. County employees get comp time. So it says if they work 45 hours, they get 5 hours of comp time. So I think that's something also, you know, I'm just trying to paint the picture that this isn't a witch hunt. I don't know how other people see it, but I'm gonna go through this report word by word, and I'm gonna read it thoroughly tonight. And my last question, because we aren't sharing information with the sheriff, and the sheriff isn't sharing information with us, is there any way that the sheriff's office can know for sure that these people that we're talking about didn't do anything wrong? Is there any way they can know that? We can't say for certain that they did something irregular. Can the sheriff's office personnel, if we're not sharing information with them, say for certain that they did not do anything irregular?
Well, you know, I think it's incumbent upon the elected leader to get to the bottom of what happens from a fiscal point of view. But at this point, as I understand it, the SBI was brought in to investigate this. And so it's the SBI's responsibility at this point to get to the bottom of it. This is an active investigation. My recollection of the fact is that the district attorney and the sheriff met with the SBI and asked them to come in and handle this investigation because one or more employees may be implicated, employed at the sheriff's department. And that's why I understood the SBI came in to investigate in the first place. So I believe that the SBI should conclude this investigation, and whatever remedial stuff comes out of it, fine. But I'll tell you from the very beginning, I've made it clear during the course of my work on your behalf, is that the county commissioners were willing, the county is willing to cooperate and work hand in hand with the investigation. And simply, that did not happen. You guys read and saw the various media accounts that it didn't happen. We made an attempt. I had numerous conversations with the district attorney. We tried to find a way, and I'm not saying that that would be negative with the district attorney. I'm simply saying that we tried to find a way to work through that and get to the bottom of this on an expedited basis. It just didn't happen. The reason that report took as long as it did, I want to reiterate this, is one, because when you get to the end of the road in these reports, you're going to identify folks that may be subject to criminal prosecution. You can't take that lightly, folks. You know, we've been very careful. If you recall, at the very beginning of this investigation, I urged each county commissioner not to comment. Remember, we had all those comments, all those discussions. I asked each one of you not to comment. And I think substantially that occurred. There were no comments from the county commissioners about this because we understood the nature of this investigation. The county offices essentially became a crime scene when the SBI executed a search warrant. And then all of the accusations that flew around involved with this made it important for us to try to find a way to work in, combination to the extent we could. It just didn't happen. But the reason that report took as long as it did is because, one, we had to be as thorough as we could be, because we're going to turn this information, as we mentioned, over to law enforcement. And they'll take a look. And they'll be able to identify folks, individually, who may have had excessive overtime, whose time sheets may have appeared to be irregular, all of those kinds of things. So we want to be active. Second part of it is that, necessary information we just couldn't get to. And that information was within the possession and control of the Polk County Sheriff's Department. We just didn't have access to that information. And quite frankly, we were recorded on it. The County Board of Commissioners made a request for a special report to obtain that information. The response was that the information was confidential and pursuant to a criminal investigation. And so that was the extent.
But Attorney Charles, that's my point. If you all was having cooperation with Agent Williams with these records, he could have produced those records if there was a pending investigation.
Well, I will say this. I don't believe those records were in the possession of Agent Williams. That was my take. Those records were in the possession of the Polk County Sheriff. And we reached out to Agent Williams. My recollection is we didn't get a response from him. But it's my understanding that those records were within the possession and control of the Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, if I can just amplify that, Commissioner Sutherland. Typically, when we get involved in internal reviews like this, we cooperate with both sides, and then we work with the SBI. They typically tell us to finish our work and then walk them through it so they can make a determination what steps to pursue next and whether or not there's sufficient predication or evidence of criminal activity. That's typically how it works. We just weren't able to because we weren't able to work through either the SBI, and it's not a slight on Agent Williams, but it's not part of the financial crime issue that typically we would work with in a case like this because it's a financial crime. And we were unable to work with the sheriff's department to either get the timesheets or review any of the timesheets that we had and ask questions about the exceptions that were noted on those timesheets, which we would expect the SBI will do when we share our report and our information with them.
You know, to your point, Commissioner Sutherland, Scott McKay, Chair Becker, and I ran a very, very large internal investigation that we completed in the not so distant future. But we did all the work. We initially met with the SBI. We alerted the SBI that we were doing the work. The SBI stood down, let us complete the work. We alerted the district attorney for the district. Both the SBI and the district attorney used our work to prosecute the bad guys. Then the FBI came to us, used the same information that we provided, all the work that we had done to prosecute. And now the people that were at the heart of this crime on this public agency are facing 46 to 56 months in prison, federal time. But the whole idea we said from the very beginning was that, and we told you all this from the very beginning, is that we're going to call balls and strikes. Whatever we see is what we're going to tell you. If the county was the problem, we're going to tell you. If the commissioners were the problem, we're going to tell you. And if it's the sheriff department, we're going to tell you. And that's what we did. Cherry Becker, nor I have any skin in this game. We simply don't. You hired us to do a job. It's an internal review, which the Board of Commissioners intended to use to strengthen the internal controls for the county. We simply had to do this based solely on the information that was within the custody and control of the county, with the exception of the interview that we had with Latanya Benjamin. She agreed to come and interview, but everybody else that was identified as a scope limitation, we were not able to talk to. And so we hope that at some point, we hope that maybe those remaining items that we were looking for, that Cherry Becker folks might be able to get those and review it and complete the work. Again, these guys had the requisite personnel to put on the job. What I'm told in most SBI investigations is that they're handling multiple investigations. So it's not just the one that affects you. They're investigating multiple different situations, and they may not always have all the resources. It's not that, they're necessarily dragging their feet or doing this, that, and the other, but they have multiple things that they're doing. And so in the case of Hope County, the county commissioners hired a resource, brought them in, we were able to do it much faster. So that goes to the point that Scott McKay mentioned. In most instances, the SBI will invite Cherry Becker and other organizations that are conducting their own internal investigations to complete those first, then turn over your work to the SBI, and then they'll apply their analytics to it and get to the bottom of it. That simply didn't happen in this case. This was a quite unusual case, I might say.
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. If Mr. Sutherland doesn't have any questions, I'd like to move forward, make a motion that Board of Commissioners go into closed session to preserve attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318, Part 11. That's my motion.
Here's motion second. Our second instruct us, all of us, to continue working together. We put the case was Friday. We all come together and get better work. So let's instruct our county to continue in all the parties, continue to work together, right to close. I think our best work is tomorrow morning. So let's continue to do that. Motion is second, all in, consent all, in favor with aye. Aye.
If you miss Ms. Candy. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, she's ready. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Thomas, I'd like to,
Withdraw my motion.
okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a statement and then possibly a motion. The Cherry Becker Group and Attorney Charleston, as early as, just as recently as tonight, has indicated to this board that during these types of circumstances in other counties, most, if not all of those counties were asked to do internal audits to help with the determination of whether criminal activities have occurred. Therefore, since it seems Hope County has been handled in such a destructive way by having our meeting venue changed because of a warrant being served by the SBI agent Adrian Williams of North Carolina SBI office, which closed our office and commissioners could not meet in their regular scheduled meeting room. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I ask that our county attorney, Mr. Hunt, craft a grievance letter to the director of the State Bureau of Investigation in response to this lack of intergovernmental collaboration, which seems to have happened, and collaboration seems to have happened in all other counties, but not in Hope County. Mr. Chairman, I would make that in the form of a motion.
Second. The motion is second on the floor. All have time to consider any questions. All in favor with aye, the motion?
Aye.
Second.
No, I think we'll be respectful of the session.
Advance. Don't let that go home. Make motion to adjourn. Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion second adjourned, go home. All in favor with aye? Aye. Aye, yeah, okay. Back up, fella. Back up. We got recesses.
Yeah.
Call, we call you. We call.
That was-
Adam, we call you. We call the second. We call motion at the right time. Consider on. Recess to make. Opposed?
Recess next Tuesday.
Yeah, I need a motion to recess to for budget workshop, not adjourn. At this time, do I hear a motion to recess next Tuesday, Wednesday at 1 p.m.? So, motion second.
Second.
For to finish the budget. All in favor of what I? Opposed, I have it. We adjourn now. We recess, not adjourn.
You won't stop.